Oh, so fun. I am not even going to attempt to follow John. I adore waffles. Does anybody else love waffles? Oh, yeah, I'm in good company. I like the old-fashioned ones, the thin ones especially, the ones that my wife makes, but Belgian waffles are okay too. I've been doing a lot of travel to congregations this fall, and I've had some waffles from those, free breakfast bars. I'm not really supposed to eat them, but who can resist the smell? Each waffle requires a little bit of butter, but above all, a sweet topping. So I'm somewhat particular about this. Jams and jellies are not ideal. Fruit toppings, meh. No nuts. And whipped cream works for dessert waffles, but not so much for breakfast waffles. What I love is syrup, often called maple syrup. I think it's hard to improve the way syrup melts into all those beautiful crevices. So I don't always choose real maple syrup because real maple syrup is often not available. But whenever I see the phrase syrup, I think maple syrup. And I am reminded that maple syrup comes from trees. This fall, one of the places I traveled to was Indiana. And I traveled when many of the leaves had changed color. There were glorious stretches of highway that were just alight. In contrast, when I returned home, I had a greater appreciation for the gently blooming bougainvillea and the wide canopy of our Chilean mesquite. Sometimes we travel just to see nature's grandeur. We come to see it, to hear it, to be inspired, to be soothed. We sometimes rely on nature to cleanse our spirit. We go out into the woods, we sit by the waters, we lose ourselves in birdsong. Nature has become a place to leave our heart pains, the poisons we want to leach from our spirits, a place to renew, a doorway to our inner dialogue with that which we call holy. Nature can be a doorway to our salvation, a word we don't use so much in our Unitarian Universalist congregations, to be saved, to be saved. Reverend Thomas Starr King captured this sense of nature beautifully. Starr King was a Unitarian minister who lived in San Francisco from 1860 to 1864. And as a Unitarian of the 1800s, he saw God's hand everywhere he looked. And in a sermon called The Living Waters of Lake Tahoe, he preached, "To a wearied frame and tired mind, what refreshment there is in the neighborhood of this lake. The air is singularly searching and strengthening. The noble pines, not obstructed by underbrush, enrich the slightest breeze with aroma and music. Grand peaks rise around on which the eye can admire the sternness of everlasting crags and the equal permanence of delicate and feathery snow. Then there's a sense of seclusion from the haunts and cares, of being held on the immense billow of the Sierra at an elevation near the line of perpetual snow, yet finding the air genial and the lowliness clothed with the charm of feeling, the sense of the mystery of the mountain, part of a chain that links the two polar seas, and of the mystery of the water poured into the granite. Oh, this rim is chased with the splendor of perpetual forms, and whose bounty, flowing into the Truckee stream, finds no outlet into the ocean, but sinks again into the land. Starr King wrote a lot about nature, and in his numerous books and articles helped Abraham Lincoln decide to create Yosemite. We can define nature as that place we seek out with the express purpose of looking at and experiencing something perfect and maybe perfected. We may plan the trip, take vacation days, drive or fly to get there, but it's also in our backyard too. It's the seeds and bulbs we plant, the Palo Verde we've nurtured since it was a sapling, the oleander we've trimmed so it is just so. A perennial question that I wonder is this: where in this view of nature is a space for squawking mockingbirds who pick up squished French fries from the sidewalk? What about the weeds growing around the metal plates in the streets and in the cracks of our driveways? The moths, attracted by our night-burning lights, who throw themselves against our window screens and want to eat our wool sweaters? What about those pesky mosquitoes pricking our skins and making us itch, and jackrabbits nibbling our gardens and squirrels eating the bird seed we put out? What about dandelions turning to billowy white puffs? There is a story by Dr. Suess called Bipolo Seeds. You might not be familiar with the story because he wrote it for a magazine rather than as a book. Here's how the story starts.
One bright sunny day, a young duck named McCluck had a wonderful, wonderful piece of good luck. He was walking along when he spied on the ground a marvelous scene that is quite seldom found. It was a small silver box, and it looked mighty old. And on top of the box, it was written in gold. Who finds this rare box will be lucky indeed, for inside this box is a Bipolo seed. Plant it and wish, and then count up to 3. Whatever you wish for, whatever it be, will sprout and grow out of a Bipolo tree.
So then, young Duck McCluck thinks about what he needs and decides to wish for duck food for a week. But before he can plant the seed, a cat appears and says, "Stop!" The cat then proceeds to quiz young Duck McCluck as to why he wants so little. Bit by bit, encouraged by the cat, the young duck asks for more and more until finally young Duck McCluck shrieks out,
I wish for 1,000,000 silk towels and 3,000,000 cages for very old owls and 45,202 hamburger buns and a bottle of glue and 4,000,000 satin-lined red rubber boots and 5,000,000 banjos and 6,000,000 flutes, oranges, apples, and all kinds of fruits and 9,000,000,000 Hopalong Cassidy suits. Yes, that's what I wish for. By Jiminy G. And he got so excited, and he whirled, and he twirled, and that duck got so dizzy and crazy with greed that he waved both his arms, and the Bipolo seed slipped out of his fist, flew high in the sky, and landed kerplunk on a river nearby.
and the Bipolo seed floated away. Young Duck McCluck had the right idea. When presented with a single seed, he saw himself in relationship with nature, asking for just what he needed and no more. But in the end, he was taught to see nature as something he could use for his own ends and more. We, as U.S. Americans, have made ourselves the reference point sometimes for what is worth saving and how much consumption we need for a good life. We have defined a good life sometimes in excess, so that now we can slip unconsciously into assuming what we can afford is what we need. In our culture, nature has become something we segment, lifting bits of it onto a pedestal, wanting to manipulate the rest for our own ends, like young Duck McCluck swayed by cat. If young Duck McCluck had been a Wabiboto, he would have been content with his very first wish, to have enough duck food for a week. A Wabibito is one who follows the philosophy of wabi-sabi. Wabi-sabi is a hyphenated Japanese word. In 1942, Unitarian-influenced Buddhist philosophy professor D.T. Suzuki described wabi-sabi as an active aesthetical appreciation of poverty. A poverty, in his culturally situated interpretation, meant the idea of getting rid of the need, preferably even the desire for material things. He wrote, "Wabi is to be satisfied with a little hut, a room of 2 or 3 tatami mats like the log cabin of Thoreau, and with a dish of vegetables picked in the neighboring fields, and perhaps to be listening to the pattering of a gentle spring rain." The wabi-sabi today finds beauty in imperfection, in the modest, in the impermanent. Wabi-sabi accepts gently and with deep reverence the cycle of growth, decay, and death. It means to be in tune with nature and in nature, to find beauty in that which is easily overlooked, that which is not sought out. Wabi-sabi provides one way to counter our tendency toward valuing the parts of nature we consider pleasing, grandeur, awe-inspiring. Another way to change our perspective is the Buddhist middle way, which is avoiding extremes of indulgence on one side and asceticism on the other. The concept of enough, sometimes translated as sufficiency, is inherent in Buddhist teachings. Desire can be a source of suffering, while contentment a path to liberation. Enough is enough. We sometimes do not experience, let alone value all of nature. We might reject that which we label as inconvenient or ugly. Sometimes we rip it out without appreciation or giving thanks for what it may offer. Paul Dayton grew up near Tucson. In an essay, he is remembering being a kid frolicking in the desert with his brother, and he remembers his mom saying to see the desert through the eyes of the desert. He writes, "As the cat claws ripped my clothes and skin, and the agaves along the ridge in Upper Pima Canyon bloodied my legs, I realized that they were protecting themselves." Nature reminds us in this time of year when the weather says, "Come outside," or looking out our windows, that we can cultivate our joy in just having enough, even if we have a bipolo seed in our grasp. This season, I am inspired to go out into the desert and to stay overnight. I will take in the land, the sky, the stars, the buttes, the tiniest rocks and minerals between my feet. At night, it will be pitch dark. I will worry if I need to get up in the middle of the night. of coyotes and creepy crawlies and a prickly cactus protecting itself from me. I will listen to my heart beating. I will feel my breath. I will be uncomfortable away from home and be grateful for all that I have. I will remember that I am but one tiny thing on this planet. May that awareness be a gift I give to myself and a challenge to me. Nature, put me in my place. In this season of sometimes excesses, may you find a way to cultivate your mindfulness of what is enough. Namaste.